All right. Hello, everyone. It's Pepper and Jamie back together after a long hiatus. I don't even remember how we opened our podcast. Did we do something formal?
No, I think we just talked about who we were. Yeah, we just started talking. And one of the great things about Jamie and I think our friendship is, somebody told us one time that it's weird that our friendship seems to match so well. That's like they're two very unexpected people that somehow work. So
yeah, it is because you're always finding a way to romanticize something, and I'm finding a way to make it dark and gruesome.
but I also think the reason why it works, not so much our opposites, but that I think we have similar.
Oh, of course. Now my computer's going to freeze. Fudge. Why? If you can hear me, I'm trying to fix it's my internet on the side.
Of the not similarities, like your scary stuff.
Right. Did you notice that I completely froze and did not?
No, you didn't freeze.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was just watching.
Did you hear me yakking? I'm like,
no. Okay,
frozen.
You did freeze. I did hear you say, "Oh, and now my computer's going to freeze."
Oh yeah, it did. Like you were just completely like.
In my beautiful way, with that open, drooly mouth version of me.
Right. So we can either leave that in for life's reality or edit it out. I'm all for leaving it in because it's just part of life.
I know, and I think that makes it more realistic.
Right. It's you just Murphy's Law with us.
That's right. So you guys listening, those of you who have heard our previous podcast, we really do shoot from the hip on this thing. It's not like a planned thing. No. So you're getting a really good foray back into Smooches and Stabs, frozen computer screens, and drooly mouths. It's
right. Perfect. Yeah. We don't really edit. It's no, it's raw, it's unfiltered, which I think is kind of what makes Smooches and Stabs very much like us, because we're pretty raw and unfiltered.
Very true. And the cool thing about lots of times when we come up with an idea, either I'll bring it to the page or Jamie will bring it to the page, and neither one of us knows what the other one's going to bring. So today, Jamie's bringing something I have not even read. I only know what the guy's name is. So we're going to be, it really is off the cuff. And I love that because you guys are getting immediate responses. Maybe I'll love that. Maybe I won't love that.
I don't know. This one. Oh, you're going to love this one. This one is totally up your conspiracy theory alley. And there's so many ways to build romance into it. It's sickening. Like I'm already nauseated.
Or delightful. I hear the Hallmark chime happening in the back of my mind.
I don't even know what that sounds like. Okay, so today I can't even tell you what year we're going to. Okay, that's how mysterious this dude is.
Oh, yay!
We could be in 1626. We could be in 410.
410?
We could be in Atlantis.
Oh, I like that. Let's do it.
We could be in secret societies in Germany.
Right. Or Amish space people.
Yeah, no, that's not on the list.
Oh, okay. No Amish space people in 16 whatever.
So the dude we're talking about today is so mysterious that there's times that people say they have even seen him in 1957.
Oh, I'm liking this.
All right. So dude's name, and I won't be able to pronounce it correctly, is the Count of Saint Germaine, or also known as Count de Saint Germaine.
Nice.
Who supposedly, if we go with his actual date of birth to maybe date of death, 1710 to 1784.
It's a very romantic name.
He's not good looking. I'm just going to say that.
Everybody goes to look him up.
I'm just going to say that. I mean, he's Maybe he would be without the white powder puff wig.
Yeah. I think that would
If we
probably.
did AI on him, he might actually strike a pose, but he just looks real smarmy. But he was kind of smarmy, but
Well,
in a mysterious way.
if he's like a couple thousand years old, I think he should have a look on his face that's kind of superior. What do you think?
Okay. All right. I'm just going to read to you because I can't paraphrase this. So I'm going to read to you from the New World Encyclopedia.org a little bit about Count Saint Germaine. He was a mysterious gentleman who appeared among the royal families of Europe in the 18th century, known as Der Wundermann. I don't know.
Der Wundermann.
Der Wundermann. His varied and unique talents reportedly included, get this, chemistry, alchemy, music, and magic. He had no visible means of support, but no lack of resources. From historical and personal reports, he has at various times been considered a prophet, a charlatan, a healer, a spy, and a visionary. He is said to possibly have been the founder of Freemasonry, which inspired several of the American founding fathers.
Yes.
And has its own level of
mystery. Creepy.
Others say he's Shakespeare and wrote most of Shakespeare's work, while simultaneously being the scientific genius known as Francis Bacon. Okay. And in New Age movements, he's identified as the avatar of the age of Aquarius and is considered an ascended master on par with history's greatest spiritual leaders.
Okay. Wonderman means Wonder Man. So that is really interesting. So basically one of the first Avengers or something.
Right. So apparently, okay, so let's go to what we do know about him specifically.
Okay, what do you know?
He came into prominence in 1742 in Europe, and he had just spent 5 years in the Shah of Persia's court, where he learned basically the jeweler's craft. Like, he learned all about jewels. Oh. So the guy was always bedecked in jewels.
Okay.
He knew knowledge of like science, history, etc., and was constantly impressing people with that. Now, I have my own thoughts because, like, back in those days, you could pretty much say anything and be like, whoa, you're a genius, because who has the internet to search and verify, right?
Right, true.
However, we have to admit that he was pretty smart because he knew French, German, Dutch, Spanish, Portuguese, Russian, English, was familiar with Chinese, Latin, Arabic, and even ancient Greek and Sanskrit.
Oh my goodness, I'm in love with this man.
Right. Okay. So in 1760, the fact that he was so learned started the rumor that perhaps he was actually immortal. Because there's no way anybody who lives a general life could possibly know all this information. That's the argument that was given.
Right.
The Countess von Georgi heard that Count Saint Germaine arrived for a soiree at the home of Madame de Pompadour, mistress of King Louis XV of France, and she was curious because she had known a Count de Saint Germaine in Venice in 1710. So she's sort of like, hey, we're going to have a little reunion. I met somebody like that, and I haven't seen him in years, right? So, ooh, fun. But when she meets him, he hadn't aged. So she's like, dude, was that your dad that I met in Venice? And I'm sure she said it that way, right?
Yeah.
Dude, is that your dad?
Do death.
So here's how the conversation's recorded, right?
Okay.
And then we can talk some more. Forgive, no, madame, he replied, but I myself was living in Venice at the end of the last and the beginning of this century. I had the honor to pay you court then. Forgive me, but that is impossible, the perplexed countess said.
Impossible.
The Count de Saint Germaine I knew in those days was at least 45 years old, And you at the outside are at that age at present. At present. My
Yeah,
horrible French accent, right?
I love
Madame,
it.
Madame, I'm very old, he responds. Then you must be nearly 100 years old. That is not impossible. And then he continues to convince her that he was the same man because he knew details of their meetings and the life in Venice 50 years earlier.
Oh my, oh my, oh my. We may have to
Mm-hmm.
rewrite the Jane Austen
Right,
idea.
right. So, like, really, he just kind of was there. And then in 1779, he went to Hamburg, Germany, where he befriended the prince there. And then, according to local records, he died there. But then there's been spottings of him well into the 20th century.
So he's kind of like Elvis.
Yes. The first Elvis.
The first
Yes.
Elvis
This is the
was
first
the
Elvis.
Count of Saint Germaine.
He's also said, I saw on one website that he was reported to have married a woman in the 1700s and then disappeared with all of her jewels because he loved jewels. So, I'm not sure how much authority that story has, but even his shoes, according to history, were studded with jewels.
It says here he wrote music, not just liked music.
Right. He could
But
play the violin.
he could play the violin.
He was a painter. He was a man of great wealth, according to how he looked and seemed, but he wasn't known to have any banking information.
And he has books attributed to him. So author, musician,
Writer, painter. I mean, the dude's gotten around. So
I am loving this.
Right? And there's just so much information. So, like, according to several of the 20th century groups, such as Freemasons, etc., he was the ruler of a golden age civilization in the area of the Sahara Desert 70,000 years ago. He was also I'm not making this up. He was also he was the high priest of Atlantis 13,000 years ago, serving near where the island of Cuba is now. So that might give us a clue to where Atlantis is, because everybody goes to Cuba to find Atlantis.
Yeah, right? That was my first thought. Exactly.
Ha! Ha! He's also the prophet Samuel from scripture. Just throw that one out there.
Oh, okay. So which would be, way back. I never thought Samuel would go to Atlantis, but I think, no.
That's one story that could get twisted real fast. He was Plato. He was the husband of Mary at the Christmas story. So he's Joseph.
And Samuel. Wow.
And
I don't even think Elvis has this kind of history.
No, he's also Christopher Columbus. I just want to throw that in there. There's others, but that one takes the cake.
So he was probably on the Mary Celeste that disappeared mysteriously too.
I almost spit coffee all over my microphone when you said that.
That's what happened.
I think he's probably responsible for just about every historical event that ever happened.
See, I'm feeling though, on this one part that I just saw, it says that where was it? Because I think this is very interesting for those of us for our readers who will understand this correlation.
Yeah.
In a letter of December of 1745, Horace Walpole mentions the Count de Saint Germaine as being arrested in London on suspicion of espionage, which was happening around the same time as the Jacobite Rebellion of 1745. Time travel is not uncommon with people who are around the Jacobite Rebellion, as far as I know, those of you who are Outlander fans. So sitting here wondering,
he's Jamie from Outlander. Oh my gosh.
No, Jamie's so much cuter. But but the idea, I mean, this guy has to He sings, plays on the violin wonderfully,
Mhm,
composes,
mhm.
is mad and not very sensible. He is called an Italian, a Spaniard, a Pole, and somebody that married a great fortune in Mexico and ran away with her jewels to Constantinople. A priest, a fiddler, and a vast nobleman. Clearly, he's not Elvis. And I mean, oh my goodness, this guy is definitely either a time traveler or he is a vampire.
Well, and he's like I said, right. He's been spotted. He was seen in Germany in 1785 with Anton Mesmer, the pioneer hypnotist. Um, and he was chosen in 1785 as the representative for the Freemasons. And then after they took the Bastille in the French Revolution in 1789, the Comtesse de
Yeah, well,
said she had a lengthy conversation with the Count, and he told her of France's future as if he knew what was coming. And then in 1821, so that would have been like, what, 40 years later, she'd seen him again. And that was the day Queen Antoinette was murdered. And he apparently knew something about that. I don't know.
so
But then
he's like one of your ravens. He shows up and bad things happen.
he
The
does. He's
Jacobite
like a bad
rebellion.
omen.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh,
And
oh,
he was also seen in 1972. He was on French, yeah, in Paris. And he had taken on the name Richard Chanfrey, who announced to the world that he was the Count and was on French television to prove his claim.
was he rich?
Let's see. To prove his claim, apparently turning lead into gold on a camp stove. So if he could turn lead to gold, I'd say he was rich. But apparently it didn't really serve Chanfrey well because he committed suicide in 1983. So
But did
whether
he
that
live?
was the final demise of Count Saint Germaine or
Okay, here he's probably committed suicide so many times because he knows he's coming back. He's
right,
like,
right.
yeah. So here's this quote.
Okay,
On
yep.
one occasion of him meeting someone in 1749, after a private musical performance in London, Lady Jemima York described how she was very much entertained by him and at him the whole time. I mean, the oddness of his manner, which it is impossible not to laugh at. Otherwise, you know, he is very sensible and well bred in conversation. And she continued, these are great things.
Aren't these great?
He is an odd creature. And the more I see him, the more curious I am to know something about him. He is everything with everybody. He talks ingeniously with Mr. Ray, philosophy with Lord Willoughby, and his gallant and is gallant with Miss York, Miss Carpenter, and all the young ladies. But the character and philosopher is what he seems to pretend to, and to be a good deal conceited of. The others are put on to comply with but that you are to suppose his real characteristic, and I can't but fancy he is a great pretender in all kinds of science, as well as that he really has acquired an uncommon share in some.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
See, okay. So I have so many theories about this man. The first theory is probably the least exciting. He was a con artist and he had fun while he was alive and then he died.
Can you be a con artist and also be a time traveler, though? See, I'm thinking
No,
yes.
well, I mean, yeah, but if we're going with the realistic
Oh,
explanation,
oh, you're gonna be realistic. I'll be
I'm gonna be
fanciful.
realistic. Well, let's just be realistic for a second here. Let's just think.
Okay, yeah.
He,
So if he was
at
born sometime in 17 what?
1710 and he died in 1784. He had 74 years to play the role of whatever he wanted to play. And if he had an IQ that was off the charts, it's feasible.
And just so you know, for the more realistic part, individuals who have very high IQs are usually odd. I don't
That
mean that badly, but
explains half the smart people in my world.
right. So I mean, if you were to even like
Yeah.
um all the people who have this gap and even a gap between their intelligence and their social ability, if
Mm-hmm.
there's a
Yeah.
gap there, then you've got oddness. and learning how to do that relational thing.
Oh
So,
yeah.
but it
Yeah.
sounds like he was relational, but I mean, it's interesting that she would
Uh,
say an odd creature. So there was something about him that wasn't quite right.
Well, and I'm sure, I mean, because I mean, you think of the times and the lack of resources they had to, background check these people. You really could say that you were whoever you wanted. And if you have even a reasonable amount of information and a great acting ability, you can pass yourself off as smarter than you actually are.
True. If you have
Like,
money too.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you can make yourself an authority on topics. And if nobody can fact check you and they know less than
I
you
mean, have
must
you
be
read The
right.
Count of Monte Cristo? The Count of Monte Cristo, he
Mm-hmm.
recreates himself.
Exactly.
He does come upon some money, quite a bit
Mm-hmm.
of it, to be able
That
to
helps.
recreate himself. Yes,
Right.
but he was in prison for what 16 years in Chateau d'If and learned languages. Italian. He learned all these languages. He is he was
I was waiting for
inspiration.
that.
He was the inspiration for The Count of Monte Cristo. Edmond
He
was
probably wrote the book. He's probably Alexander Dumas too.
probably like, okay, you're gonna appreciate this. This will may kick your realistic exposition. It may. Here we go. This who was it? Who's Walpole, which was a lord of the time period, said that concludes that the count was a man of quality who had been in or designed for the church. He was too great a musician not to have been famous if he had not been a gentleman. Walpole described the count as pale, with extremely black hair and a beard. He dressed
Mm.
magnificently and had several jewels, and was clearly receiving large remittances, but made no other figure.
Did he have fangs?
No fangs are reported from Walpole. However, if you are out with people, you rarely show your fangs if you're truly vampiric. So you wait till you're alone. It's easier probably to attack people in the singular, sense. That's
Right.
probably really what happened to his wife. Anyway, um, but
Oh
again,
my gosh. I
I'm
just stumbled on something that will
I
blow all of this out of the
no, I
water.
think he came back as what was the guy in Anastasia, the weird priest guy? Um, Count Rasputin. I think he's Rasputin.
It could be. But did you know there was a vampire in Louisiana?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's hear
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There was a vampire in Louisiana, and they're saying, according to this website, it was Saint Germaine. And he traveled and found himself in Germany, and then made his way to New Orleans, okay, which
New
is
Orleans,
like the most haunted city in the
and
United
very
States.
magical, and very
Mm-hmm.
magical.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And while he was in New Orleans, he apparently invited a lady to his house and had a party with many up and coming elite, took her to a balcony and attempted to bite her neck. And she was able to escape by jumping off the balcony onto the pavement, but she was totally terrified. She had blood trickling down her neck. And they
Ooh.
said, and then he like escapes. And then they said they found clothes from all different time periods in his house. They were stained in blood.
What year was this again?
I'm trying to find out. Because it's just like this whole like article, because every article on the internet is factual.
Right, exactly.
Pause for
I've
dramatic
got another
effect.
quote to read to you. This is great.
Go for it.
It's so adding to what you're reading. It's so fantastic. Okay. So, Giacomo Casanova describes in his memoirs several meetings with the celebrated and learned impostor. Of
Oh.
his first meeting in Paris in 1757, he writes, "The most enjoyable dinner I had was with Madame de Robert-Guergy, who came with the famous adventurer known by the name of Count de Saint Germaine." This is in 1757. This
Okay.
individual, instead of eating, talked from the beginning of the meal to the end. And I followed his example in one respect, as I did not eat, but listened to him with the greatest attention. It may safely be said that as a conversationalist, he was unequaled. Now he's been running around with a hypnotist, so maybe he's got some skill. Saint Germain gave himself out for a marvel and always aimed at exciting amazement, which he often succeeded in doing. He was a scholar, linguist, musician, and chemist, good looking, and a perfect ladies' man.
Has they looked at his has they see, I'm a writer. Has they looked at his picture?
He, for a while, he gave the ladies paints and cosmetics. He flattered them, not that he
I thought you said pants.
Pants and cosmetics. Poor lady. It's an early time for women to finally get to wear pants. I'm all about it. He said it wouldn't make them young again, but it would preserve their beauty if they washed with it.
Yeah, because it was laced with mercury.
Or
that's what they did back then.
I think it's part of his way of enchanting them so they would come and he could suck their blood. He contrived to gain the favor of Madame de Pompadour, who had spoken about him to the king.
I want that as a name. I want to be Madame Pompadour.
For whom he had made he who had spoken about him to the king, for whom he had made a laboratory in which the monarch, a martyr to boredom, tried to find a little pleasure or distinction, at all events by making dyes. So the king liked to make dyes. The king gave him a suite of rooms and 100,000 francs for the construction of the laboratory. And according to Saint Germain, the dyes discovered by the king would have materially beneficial influence on the quality of French fabrics. So the king made him a laboratory? Is that what I'm hearing?
This guy, okay. All right. So it's time that we proceed and put our own spin on these things. And y'all know where I'm going to go with this. There's zero romance in this story. It is 100% going to be titled The Man Who Conned the World.
Well, I can do that too, the con part. But it's going to be romantic.
Right.
Go for it,
yeah, no, but mine is like, I'm thinking assassinations and a ladies' man. Like, I kind of picture him as a Casanova. Like the type of person that comes in and just swoops in. And yeah, sure. I think if I were going to twist his story, he wouldn't actually be a vampire, but right. he would produce, he would present himself with enough mystique that he would actually embrace the idea of a vampire. In other words, kind of pawns himself off as one.
Yeah.
Because the lure of a vampire, oh man, I want to write this book. The lure of a vampire would bring these beautiful women to his doorstep.
It would work out great for split time.
It would. And he could lure these women to his doorstep. And then, they're just completely enamored by his knowledge and his musical ability, his poetic ability, his charisma. And then off with their heads. Like he completely murders them. And maybe like if I'm going to go gory here, like he'll collect their blood in vials, and he's got like oh, I love it. He's got Pepper's like wincing. He's got like vials of blood on his shelves for each woman that he murdered. Like he's a con artist serial killer from the 1700s that was never given credit, because now today people think he's immortal and he's like the head of the new age movement. Yes. In reality, he's just a dead serial killer who is super smart. That's my take.
Oh, see, everything has to go back to serial killers. What is that about?
Well, how are you going to incorporate kisses into this with them actually being romantic? Like I have kisses, but they're not romantic. They die.
I think he is a time traveling spy who is trying to find his long lost love, who got lost in the time traveling continuum, and he's trying to find her. So he comes back through all these different time periods to try to find her, thus not aging. And if he's been around for a long time, he's learned all these skills. So he's gonna obviously present himself mysteriously. Here's the thing. There are a couple of instances in his history where he was trying to negotiate between countries to bring peace. There are a couple of instances where he was trying to help certain political groups. And so I think maybe he's going back and forth in time to help change the future to be better by knowing what's going to happen in the past. So he has jewels. Maybe he discovered something in Atlantis while he was there that allowed him the ability to time travel, and he's constantly trying to find his one true love through time. I think I should write that one.
I think we should have our listeners vote. Which
I
one
do
would you
want to
prefer?
get to it
Which
time.
which one do you want to read? The blood-sucking serial killer vampire con artist, or the
Or
time-traveling Atlantis hero who,
unrequited love story. Atlantis jewel magic time traveler unrequited love story.
I don't even know where to go with this now.
Well, it's just so interesting. I mean,
It is.
If we were to take out all of our fanciful ideas, the idea that somebody, a human person, because you and I both know we don't believe in time travel at this point, or vampires at this point, or real magic doing something like that. And so the idea that one person could cause such a legacy of curiosity,
Right?
and
Right?
and mystery is pretty impressive all on its own.
Well, and here's, if we really take this back a notch, if we're going to take out all the fantasy and the lovely bloodlust drama that has been fused into
Lovely.
my side of the story anyway. I mean, think about it. What if he was literally just a normal smart guy and had no concept that his desire to chit chat at the supper table was going to lead to, centuries of him being lauded for being immortal and literally being heralded as the head of, should I say, cults?
Yeah. Well,
right?
The idea, though, again, there is some sort of curiosity about how he became so rich, because in every account, he has this kind of unending flow of money. So
Yeah.
that's curious. And maybe he was just like Edmond. he in some kind of way early on in his life came into a bunch of money.
Yeah. Or else people just liked him and, kind of were investors or benefactors.
Right.
And if he was in Persia, I mean, that part seems to be accurate, where he learned how to be a jeweler. I mean,
and jewelry makes money. And
Persians aren't poor.
No.
Put that on the t-shirt. Persians aren't poor.
And if you the stories, and once you start a story, like whenever we talk about our little additional historic tidbit, people, once somebody starts something, it can catch on like wildfire and becomes bigger and bigger and bigger than
100%. Right.
Like your book, what's the one with Arwen in it?
What's the Souls of Lost Lake?
The Souls of Lost Lake. Her history was blown out of proportion because some, sneaky tongued people go in and add more than what was, right?
Right.
Or try to answer questions that you can't answer unless you were there. And so the same kind of ideas could easily have been happening here. And you're already in a world where gossip is everything, where money is big, where once you get into the royals or once you get into the aristocracy, you keep building upon that if they like you, and that can grow you.
I just figured out the answer to this entire thing. This
What?
is smack dab during the time period of Bridgerton. So it has to be, I don't really watch that, but I know there's a lady who writes papers and gossips. So she probably started it all.
Yes.
And this has nothing to do with anything but a bunch of local gossips who have nothing else to do. He's probably some poor guy who just didn't even want to be in the radar. And now he's famous.
Or as most writers can be, he's writing his own story and people are reading it.
Dun, dun, dun.
Maybe he created all the stories about his life and put them in the right places. Because you have to say, fiction writers, we do have crazy things. This podcast is an example that come into our minds
This
And
is not crazy. This is factual.
if we were going to reinvent ourselves,
Yes.
and we had the creative and brilliant ability to do so, and the financial support to do so, and we have a few extra little cool skills like jewelry making and music abilities and the gift of gab,
You're
wouldn't
not
that
wrong.
wouldn't that be a great thing for an author to do, to watch his fiction come to life in the real world?
Well, anyway, we spin it. I think today we have completely learned about a new historical character who I had never heard of before.
Pretty fascinating.
Very fascinating. So we can credit, if
He
anything.
told, you're gonna love
What?
this. The
What?
vampire thing. The Count de Germaine told the Prince of Hesse-Kassel in German, in Altona, wherever that is. He told the prince that he was the son of a Transylvanian Prince Francis Rakoczy, and he had been 88 years of age when he arrived in Schleswig.
Oh my gosh.
Transylvania came back up. Let me just say, now I've got to research where what's his name got the Dracula.
Was that Bram Stoker?
Yes, and he's Irish. Yeah, talk about
Well, it's
magical.
probably Saint Germain too.
He's probably Saint
He's
Germain.
pretty
We
much
tell the
everybody.
story again. Fiction people spinning fiction people. Aha!
Right? Oh man. All right. Well, this has been a blast. I think this has been a great way to reintroduce Smooches and Stabs and bring us back into the land of podcasts. However, in true form, do you have an interesting historical fact to close us out with?
I do. My daughter Lydia shared this interesting historical fact for you readers and listeners on Smooches and Stabs. If you have not heard about the dancing plague of 1518, and I think Jane Austen says something about dancing is the first step to falling in love. I'm not sure she meant it in this kind of way. The dancing plague of 1518, or the epidemic of 1518, was a case of dancing mania that occurred in Strasbourg, which is modern day France, in the Holy Roman Empire from July 1518 to September 1518. Somewhere between 50 and 400 people could not stop dancing.
No.
Now, there are no, yes, it's there. There are no historical accounts of accurate death counts. But there are some people who have listed some deaths of as many as 15 people dying a day from this epidemic of dancing. Some people have tried to look at modern theories of why it happened. Some people have said it was a mass hysteria and it started and then continued because of a psychological mass hysteria. Um, Other people said it was some sort of type of fungus that was on the grain of that place and it caused you to have body twitches. Some of the dancing I've seen before,
choreographed body twitches.
Choreographed body twitches. I wonder how much romance it led to, since dancing
this might be a whole other podcast. If this isn't a historical fact, this is a complete conspiracy theory story in the making.
Well, if there were any deaths, you would be all for it. And I'm sitting here thinking all these people are falling in love. So I wonder if the population increased quite a bit since then.
That would be a different form of dance, which we will not be covering in our podcast.
If dancing leads to romance, we will not be going to that dance time. Okay.
Fun. All right. Well, tell Lydia thank you for that interesting historical tidbit. I might have to look that one up and refer to that in a book, and you might have to look that one up and actually write a book, because
I don't know. I don't do that time period. Not interested unless I do a time traveling guy who lives forever and goes back to the...
And would his name by any chance be Saint Germain?
The way he found his wife was through the
he finally finds her in 15 whatever at the dancing plague, and he's like, this is why you never came back to me. You're sick.
You've been dancing too long.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, on that note, everybody, thank you so much for joining today's episode of Smooches and Stabs. And barring any more life events that completely wipe Pepper or I off the map for another year, we will see you again in a couple weeks.
For none. Let's hope for none. See you guys. Bye.
Bye.